So we're going to start with the rapid fire round. The first one is, at what age do you want to retire?
65.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
30 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Pass.
Favorite color?
Blue.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Morning.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
8.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming telecom trend is blank.
Sustainability.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Warsaw.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk.
Pass.
The biggest mistake of your career.
I don't think I have one.
How do you relax?
Gardening.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
1.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Pass.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Flexibility.
Your favorite Netflix show.
Oh, pass.
One word description of your leadership style.
Inclusive.
Top priority in your daily schedule.
Unwinding after work.
Ideal vacation spot.
Somewhere at the seaside.
Key factor for maintaining a work-life balance.
Flexibility.
Memorable career milestone.
I'll have to pass on that.
The last song you've been listening to.
Massive Attack, probably.
The last film that you saw that had a good impression on you.
A good impression. The Marvels.
Okay. All right, well, that's the end of the rapid fire. Now we move on to the longer questions.
And I take it from there. With the Dzień dobry and witamy. We welcome today to this podcast Monika Tenerowicz, who is the climate officer for Orange Polska. And I'd just like to start off by establishing what is Orange Polska. Some people who try to investigate it might be dissuaded from the fact that the main website seems to be in the Polish language, which of course is understandable. But I take it it's a mobile provider, but then launched that into an ISP service.
Yes. Orange Polska is actually the leading Polish telecom, and we work on all segments of the telecom market. So we provide services for individual customers, for businesses, and wholesale services too. And Orange Polska emerged from the former incumbents, so Telekomunikacja Polska, and merged essentially with the mobile operator Orange. That's how it began.
Okay, so your origin is back to the main state telephone company. I guess it once was a monopoly, but then obviously other separate competitors came on the scene to compete with you.
At its core, yes, and it's changed vastly over the past 20 years.
In what ways?
On the one hand,
competition, of course.
The market changed a lot. We now have 4 big players on the mobile market and even more on the fixed market. For a long time, Orange Polska and one of the competitors were the sole convergent telecoms, so offering both fixed services and mobile services. Over the past 2 or 3 years, we see 2 tendencies on the Polish market. First is the one to merge and to consolidate, which leads to more and more competitors heading the convergent way.
So a consolidation of the market, maybe lesser degree of competition, but surely there's a competition authority within the country and at the EU level keeping an eye on that? Or?
Yes, we are a very heavily regulated market in Poland.
Heavily regulated, so not only for competition, but what, for certainly not price setting, or what do you feel is particularly heavy in the regulation?
There have been some regulation moves over the past years. However, there are still parts of the business where price tables are essentially accepted by the regulatory office.
Accepted or imposed?
Accepted.
Accepted. Okay, that's very interesting. But of course, what is your particular role as climate officer? What does that mean? And if you could provide specific projects or examples of the sort of thing you get involved with, that would be very valuable.
Well, first of all, I think that what's absolutely crucial to underline is that this is not, and by this I mean the sustainable transition of a business. This is not a one-person role. This is an effort made by the entire organization, by the entire company. So what I do in my work is work with various business lines, support them in their transition towards a more sustainable and more balanced business model in terms of climate impact.
Okay, because that brings up the subject I'd like you to address and to be able to beat down, because some suspicious people might think that well, everyone has a climate officer because they have to, even greenwashing. Surely that's not the case, and you can explain, hopefully or presumably, how there's more commitment than just that on the part of Orange Polska to actually doing something.
Okay, so in the case of Orange Polska, our climate strategy dates back to 2021, and we published our climate ambitions in the April of 2021. However, we've been doing much even before that. And it was scattered and it wasn't named, actually. And main efforts came from the assumption that efficiency should be the way to go, right? Back in 2020, what we did was do a first approach towards calculating our carbon footprint, towards checking what are the priority areas for us to tackle at this point, here and now. And it turned out that because we are an infrastructural telecom, in scopes 1 and 2, so the emissions coming directly from our operations, the fuels that we burn within our network, the fuels that we burn within our fleet, which is essential if you have a network to maintain, and the energy that we use to power the network. We have 18,000 points within the infrastructure that need electric energy. Those are the main challenges for us to tackle. In Poland, today, over 70% of electric energy comes from burning fossil fuels. 3 years ago, this share was even higher. So we decided that energy is the first focus for us. And what we did was looking into renewables, essentially. Back in 2020, in the spring of 2020, so right when the pandemic hit, actually, it was March, beginning of April, we signed our first power purchase agreement, which allows us to have wind energy directly from this producer. And this was the first corporate power purchase agreements of that type, not only in Poland, but also within the Orange footprint across Europe. And one of the first ones across Europe, if I'm correct. This was the first step for us, actually, and so we signed the agreement in early 2020, but the first results of this PPA came to fruition only last year, in the fourth quarter of last year, because this is another thing that we strongly believe in, that sustainability is not an action, it's a process. It's not enough to do A, B, C. Yeah, the thing is to focus on the process, to establish milestones and a monitoring system that will allow you to actually manage what you do. Since 2020, we've signed 4 more agreements in this formula, so PPAs. Some of them are already active. Some of them are still being actually built because that's the situation in Poland. Essentially, renewable power still need to be developed most of the times.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you said you signed up with wind. I'm not aware, but maybe that's just me. What sort of wind installations, if any, in Poland? If you ask me, the nearest would be the ones off Denmark under Danish. But there are extensive wind mills even on the Polish mainland or offshore.
Mainland. At this
okay.
point, mainland. There's a discussion in terms of regulations about offshore wind power. So that is still to be developed. It is moving towards the desired direction, but there's
off the northern coast in the Baltic, they might want to do.
Yeah, but at this point, it's mainly land installations, and actually, this market has been somewhat crippled by some regulations in the midst. So we are still hoping for the regulations to change, be loosened, essentially, and allow for more powers for renewables.
Right, because you talked about signing the agreement in 20 and it only getting going in 21, if I remember correctly. Yeah, a bit of a delay. That was due to that regulation?
No, that was due to the investment process.
Oh, okay, you were signing for something that didn't exist yet, but
Yes,
okay.
and the 2020, the first PPA agreement actually meant that 2 new installations specifically for the needs of Orange Polska will be built. We have a partner that owns those installations, those farms, but we're the only ones that benefit from them. And we only saw the result in the last quarter of last year. And together with another agreement, they made up about 12% of our energy demand.
That's when the first part came online, and surely that will grow because more is coming
Yeah,
online.
actually, in the first half of this year, because we also have this approach of not waiting due to the situation on the Polish renewables market and the fact that we have to wait for those powers to be developed. We also signed an sort of an interim agreement covering 2023, so this year, and I think December 2022. For bigger volumes that will allow us to fill in the gap while we wait for other projects to be developed. And thanks to that approach, in the first half of this year, we have surpassed our ambition set for 2025, which was at least 60% of renewables within the mix of Orange Polska. In the first half of this year, we were about 70% reliant on renewables within the mix.
You talked about not waiting for the stuff to be built up. What does that mean? That presumes that there was something else that was there present at the time that you grabbed instead, so you wouldn't have to wait. That was renewable, presumably. Out of another country, or
No. We only operate across Poland, and we decided to go for powers that were available at this point in time on the spot. Yeah, renewable. Also wind farms.
Yeah, also wind. Okay.
All of the PPAs signed by Orange Polska until the September of this year were wind powers. In September, we have signed our first solar agreement, and this will allow us to balance the share of renewables in the mix throughout the year much better, because in Poland, in the colder months, it's much windier, and naturally, summer means sunny months.
What's your assessment of the comparative progress in Poland of these two renewable sources, wind and sun? Because again, you took me by surprise by the wind and even by the solar, but it just may be that I haven't been tracking progress there.
Both are developing rapidly, and in terms of solar, there's a very, very vast prosumer move. So essentially, individual people putting photovoltaic installations on their homes, on their households, or even smaller businesses. Because over the past, I think, 3 years, there has been much incentive financially also from the government, and especially local authorities and the EU funds for individual consumers or smaller businesses to go for solar, essentially. Yeah? So we've seen a boost on that year over year over the past, I think, 2 to 3 years. Now, what we are strongly dependent on, and what is still the main challenge, is the quality and the state of the infrastructure. So the basically strategic infrastructure. Yeah, it's not that new. It needs a lot of investment.
In the electrical grid, especially.
Absolutely. The electrical grid needs some specific investment to be able to essentially manage the energy volumes produced from renewables. So mainly spikes during the day. Yeah?
Right. I'd like to get into partnering, because reaching out even beyond your sector to partner to further these environmental aims. I presume that the sort of transactions that we've discussed so far were not so much partnering rather than just sort of purchasing agreements. Although indeed it must be true that you were probably the foundational customer, the essential customer that really enabled the wind projects to have the financial.
It depends. It's project by project. It actually depends, because overall in Poland there is much interest in renewables, and it only accelerated last year in 2022, because as essentially the country that's closest to a territory that is in the state of war, so Ukraine and Russia, and very strongly prior to the past, let's say, no, still strongly dependent on fossil fuels that have been imported from the Eastern Europe. There was something missing in that equation. which meant that, actually, going a step back, why we decided on the PPA and why we decided on renewable energy in the first place? Because works began way before the climate strategy. Once again, we're back to efficiency and effectiveness. The decision was made in order to, of course, limit the emissions, but also to provide some stability in terms of energy pricing and energy supply, to diversify essentially as a business strategy. And only those first two installations that were active in the last quarter of last year actually provided some savings on the energy budget within the 2020. So 12 months that, 10 months that we had a very, very volatile situation in Poland when it comes to energy market and energy prices actually surging.
Did what again? Sorry.
Surged.
Oh, surge. Yeah.
Yeah, for both businesses and individual customers. And for individual customers, the government did kind of their work and froze the prices essentially, which meant that the cost had to go somewhere.
And I'm sorry, this is the time frame when the war has started, and so not so much more energy is available from the east from traditional sources, and and obviously that hit business as well as consumers, and actually I guess governments will be quicker to cushion the consumers, the voters, rather than the businesses.
Yeah, and the changes on renewables also for consumer offers or business offers are also heavily regulated. And those regulations change a lot. And I speak of our own experience because in Poland, Orange has an energy company called Orange Energia, so Orange Energy. And they provide energy based on guarantees of origin for individual consumers or mid and small businesses. Then they also have a photovoltaic offer and so on and so on and so on.
Oh, that's interesting. So you've essentially vertically integrated, incorporated one aspect of your input into your very same company. That's wholly owned by Orange, I presume, or Orange Energia, wholly owned subsidiary.
Yes.
Okay. Again, so you brought it in house to get the energy you want to vertically integrate. So that's
well, actually, it's a subsidiary that serves our customers. They do some work in terms of solar, for example, for our offices, for us. But what their key focus is actual energy market for the consumer or for smaller or mid-sized businesses.
Okay, just only slight wholesale provision to Orange.
I wouldn't even call it wholesales. It's just business-to-business relations because what they do is they, for example, provide solar installations on one of our headquarters. Yeah.
Okay, and no doubt they also provide energy to what other business might need it. It's an energy company that sells energy to consumers and businesses and makes money. Makes money the way. The one condition though, it's owned by Orange, which insists that it be totally renewable, I presume.
That's the direction.
That's the direction.
That's the direction. It's not easy. Still in Poland, it's not easy. However, the company has a new strategy that was launched earlier this year.
And we're talking about Orange Energia.
Orange Energia,
right.
Yes.
Okay, and what would that strategy be to the extent we're allowed to know?
That strategy entails a shift not only to green energy on paper, so based on guarantees of origin, but actual green energy, so based on power purchase agreements.
Oh, in other words, a transition to what everyone expects them to get away from the fossil fuels into renewables. Yeah, the obvious thing that everything.
Yeah, and for many years, Orange Energia has been the leading so-called alternative energy provider in Poland. So that's quite a chunk of our business.
Yeah, interesting, and again, co-branded, so you gain some of the shine, obviously, from the good things that it does, in addition to the good things that Orange Polska itself does.
Yes, and actually from a major burden, because we were debating whether to include this type of operations, because it's not core telecom business. It differs vastly from what we do day to day. And we discussed on how to include emissions coming from Orange Energia into our climate accounting. The discussion is still ongoing. However, thanks to the efforts made by the guys within Orange Energia over the past year and a half, let's say, from being a burden, they may become an asset. So that's the direction.
And clearly, Orange Energia, when asked for, customers wanted so much energy, rather than saying, no, sorry, we only have so much because it has to be renewable, they said, well, we'll give you what you want, even though part of it can't be renewable, but we'll do the best we can to make the transition. Okay, interesting. Well, our research uncovered that you did serve for the city of Warsaw as a press officer and extensive background in public relations and that sort of thing. And how has that helped you in fashioning the right sort of communication strategies, which might be sort of out of the ordinary to push an extraordinary message of climate danger and the things that society and business need to do to address it effectively?
Well, back in the public administration, I used to actually work with topics related to environmental protection and economic development.
With the city and the city.
With the city, okay. Yes. Which marries essentially what we do at Orange, because the purpose of every business is to grow, and the question is not whether to do it, but how to do it. And that's the question that we're being asked more and more by our customers, both individual but businesses mainly. And being with Orange for almost a decade, I think that what is the biggest experience that I can build on and that I can use is just simple knowledge of the company, knowledge of the business.
Knowledge of the telecommunications business.
Absolutely.
And so maybe you needed a little bit of time as merely the head of media relations to learn on the side those additional stuff and to finally become the climate officer.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, as mentioned before, I've always worked with those topics, and they do interest me personally. So it all makes sense.
Okay, again, with the experience on the climate side, even with the city of Warsaw, and then that bringing along and then learning more about the new business that you've been plunging, namely telecoms, rather than administration, to develop your skills, and then finally become the legitimate climate officer with both a media background and also from your time with the city and interest and skills and knowledge about the climate.
One thing that I think is the strongest assumption that I have in both lines of work is to tell the truth and lead by example as a business, because at Orange we are a leader in merely business terms, so numbers of customers, volumes of services, and so on and so on. We are the ones. Yeah, it is our responsibility to also lead by example in all of the other areas that we have to be taken into consideration and we have to be accountable for. And we at Orange, we've done many things that are actually, well, good examples of sustainable transition in terms of telecoms. For example, in Poland, we don't sell the customer premise equipment, so set-top boxes or modems to the customer. We lease it. Yeah, we lease those boxes, which means that over 90% of those boxes can come back to us. And once we collect them from the customers, just outside of Warsaw, we have a refurbishment line. Each, for example, modem, the latest model that is handed out to the customers, by design, is ready to be refurbished at least 7 times. Which means that we don't have to buy 6 additional modems to give them to the customer. We can use this one. This is the only facility of this type within Orange Group in Europe. And we also work for other countries across the Orange footprint for refurbishment of customer premise equipment. Per year, it's about 500,000 devices that goes over this refurbishment line, which is quite a result, I guess.
Don't have to be made out of new; can be reused in a
very
efficient way.
And actually, they're just as good as new. The newer devices are constructed also in a way that allows us to use the casing or use and essentially exchange any internal components that need to be exchanged. We have the core of the device, and for example, Wi-Fi module can be replaced, so we can actually upgrade the device to give better quality to the customer within the same casing and the same mainframe, which prevents life cycle emissions from growing.
Exactly. Well, that sounds like one example of a sort of a portfolio of best practices for Orange Polska, where you're leading the field among your fellow telecom companies. Can you name some others where you stand out in that same sort of way?
Another example, maybe our policy regards refurbished personal devices, so mainly smartphones. For the past years, we've been active in this realm, mainly through scattered operations. Last year, we gathered them and created a single program, so reuse, reduce, recycle. Repair, which is also a major factor.
Those you just can't give to someone else because they know it's the old kind of thing. They have to have a different approach for that. Yeah.
We're responsible for the devices that we introduce to the market, which means that we have our ambitions set for how many devices we collect from the market to either recycle the materials that are inside a smartphone, because to produce one smartphone takes roughly from 40 to 70 kilograms of raw materials, which is way more than you'd imagine, right? And thanks to taking them back, either refurbishing and reintroducing to the market, which we do, we have a refurbished offer, or recycling, so using the components that can be used, utilizing safely what else is there that we cannot essentially reuse. We try to limit the impact of digital devices, personal devices on the environment. So this is both of those examples are a way of introducing our customers to join us in the path to sustainability and the path to zero emissions. Our global ambition is net zero by 2040.
On whose basis? On Orange Polska itself being net zero, or Poland, or
Orange Polska.
Orange Polska
Yes.
to be net zero.
And
2040.
Yes, and it includes all scopes. So the fuels that we burn, the energy that we use, and also across the value chain, which is a huge challenge that we are now approaching and introducing some solutions, as mentioned, for the customers. But also a lot of work is done with the vendors, with our suppliers, which is a major part. As an example of an action that also promotes circularity, but more oriented towards specific telecoms operations, and I mean the backhaul operations. We also have an internal program within the Orange Group.
Within the Pan-European Orange Group.
Yes,
right?
yes. That allows us to either resell the network equipment or network components that we don't use, and that are usable and are in a state that allows us to do so, or buy refurbished equipment for the network when it is reasonable. So this is another example of this life cycle approach, but applied to our core operations.
Applied to even your wholesale network equipment, which again you join in cooperation with your other Orange companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a big example because network equipment makes up a lot of what we do, but we try to work with every little aspect. For example, we have agreements with technical schools across the country. There are 3 or 4.
What do they do for you?
No, we do stuff for them.
You do for them?
Yes. Yes, we provide them with excess fiber optic cables and similar components that we don't need anymore, that are not usable. We provide them with fiber optic cables or other network components that we won't be using, that are essentially spare when it comes to our operations, but those institutions can hand them to their students. They can learn more practically about the work that they will be doing within the telecom industry. So this is an example of a small action, but actually very meaningful.
Yeah, surely it sounds like it. You mentioned how the wider world in Poland, shall we say, only got onto the renewables bandwagon around in 22. Well, you were already in 20, of course, making your initial agreements.
It happened before, but 2022 was certainly a boost.
And possibly for very cynical, practical reasons, in terms of energy supplies being scarce, having to find something different, maybe, and why not renewables?
Yeah, but actually what we did even before, starting 2013, I think, was saving the energy that we use. So energy optimization, essentially, with good results, because between 2016 and 2022, the end of 2022, we've saved over 1 terawatt hour. So for reference, that's about the same amount that Orange Polska will use up in 2023 and 2022 combined. So it is quite a result, I think.
Okay.
And we use various measures to do that. For example, run sharing with T-Mobile in Poland.
Okay, but what I had in mind was in looking to the future, to what extent there is a sustainability movement across all of Poland's telecom industry, yourself and your competitors. To what extent the other ones have also, shall we say, see the light, have taken a look at Polska Orange best practices, adapted to some degree to their own practices, and getting serious about the climate crisis and various net zero goals, even on the nationwide scale, trying to achieve them.
It's a direction that generally Polish businesses go for. Not only telecoms, not only ICT companies. What is specific to the telecom and in general ICT business, because as part of our B2B operations, we have an integrator company as well. So it's called Integrated Services and provides loads of wide scope of ICT services. What we can do is support other industries in their sustainable transition. We have the means to do it, we have the knowledge to do it, and in the case of Orange Polska, we also have our own experience that we can share, for example, in terms of energy efficiency. One example of a solution that is very efficient in actually tackling the climate issue, and for other industries as well, is smart metering, sensors, Internet of Things solutions, smart cities.
Smart metering, being able to read meters without a physical person.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an essential component for companies to, for example, track their energy use and manage it more efficiently. Once again, we're back to the efficiency.
Okay.
Everything that you haven't used is the most climate friendly. Yeah.
Okay, but does there exist like an industry association of telecoms through which someone could take the initiative, maybe Orange Polska, to voluntarily spread best practice and try to pull everybody collectively into a more sustainable attitude?
Yes, we work together with other telecoms, with device suppliers, with vendors within the framework of the Polish Chamber for Telecommunications. We have a dedicated climate and environment committee, and we are working within that entity on industry standards regarding the climate and environment, and fostering awareness, basically, on the issues that we have to face and the challenges that we have to tackle.
And this is all presumably, not necessarily so profitable, but of course, if you don't have a country anymore, or if there's a climate crisis, you don't have much in the business anyway. So out of sort of the pro bono or public service incentives of Orange Polska.
That's actually a very common, I think, misunderstanding.
Okay.
Because being more sustainable doesn't mean it's expensive. It's like the energy example, right? If you buy conventional energy and then buy guarantees of origin on top of that, yes, it will be more expensive. But if you decide to go for renewables, so essentially the real deal, the price may be better. And this is a simple example to show how I think that the global approach is also changing.
You mean literally global, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Even back 2 years ago, when we look back 2 years ago, CFOs were not very keen on sustainability because that's the first that came to their mind. Because there was this sort of old school of thinking about ESG, so environmental social governance commitments, that they must cost. Yeah, it has to cost money. But if you do it the right way, so integrate this sustainable logic within your business operations, you won't have to pay on top. It will be amping up your results, and it will be boosting your business, especially in the situation that we have now in Europe, where sustainable issues, let's call it that way, and ESG is gaining more and more traction, and we're about to enter a new era of non-financial reporting that will be accounted for in the same framework as financial reporting. More and more businesses will be paying more and more attention to sustainable.
We'll have to be. We'll be required to be.
Absolutely. because what you do as their supplier, so what we do as their supplier in terms of ICT, will be visible in their reporting, in their track record. This is essentially a business opportunity and not a burden.
Exactly, especially since fortunately solar and wind have broken through a lower barrier and getting cheaper and cheaper and making more sense on their own terms. Okay, good.
Right. So the last question for you is of a personal kind. What would you be doing in your life if not this?
That's a very good question. I think I would be running a flower shop.
That's beautiful and sustainable.
She likes gardening.
I like gardening, I do, and it's always kind of, I've always associated this line of work with peace and tranquility.